prices up significantly. Cement, for example, prices rose by about 40%. Several other manufacturing companies were able to push up their prices. They are still trying to pass on some of the losses they made in 2016 to consumers. So you have a situation where gross earnings went up, but largely as a result of an increase in price. And in terms of real GDP, we take out that impact of a price increase. So I think it is not necessarily a contraction in manufacturing. It's just that year on year, and you have to understand that this year on year, it grew slower than it did in the first quarter. And also in the first quarter, it is comparing year on year. If you look at quarter on quarter, you might not see that same contraction as you put it.
Thank you, Secretary General. A very quick question from me. I'm looking back at the volume of work that goes into calculating a GDP on a quarterly basis. Give us a sense of how many pages of documents how many hours do you spend putting these numbers together?
Well, our national accounts teams are divided into 40. So you have 46 different activities, and you have a different team looking at each of those particular activities. So you are getting data from every single activity, all 46 activities, with different people working on different things. So in our frame, we have over 900,000 establishments, from which we draw a sample of over 300,000 establishments. So you have like records of over 300,000. We have over 300,000 records going into this, and you have to crunch these numbers. It takes quite a while. You have to put a lot of, and you have to be very careful in terms of ensuring that errors are not made. That's when you get the raw data. After you get the raw data, you now have to deflate. And each economic activity actually has a different procedure for deflating to take out the impact of prices. So it's really, really very esoteric. It's something that our staff have to be trained on. The system of national accounts is extremely technical. The international standards for industrial classification is extremely technical. It's not pure accounting work. So it's a lot of work that goes into it, and a lot of care has to be taken into the computation of GDP. But like I said, we follow the international standards in computing the GDP.
My point is just to, before Bismarck Rwani intervene, I just want to put this to rest, that when we say a GDP, we're not talking about something that government offices put together. This is purely field work and crunching the numbers and pouring acid on them to test them over and over again before they are released.
No, NBS is the only government agency involved in getting this work. Our work is not discussed with government agencies. There are some government agencies that give us data. For example, public institutions, which is a part of the 46 activities. Obviously, we get that from government. We try and get the data from banks, from the CBN, for example, just to make our work easier rather than having to go to how many different banks at the same time. But apart from that, I don't think there's any involvement whatsoever in government in the work we do. They receive the results as they are once we publish. And like I said, as a courtesy, we make it available to a select key members of the economic team, just again to give them a sense of what is happening. And in case they have to take questions from the media, people like yourselves, they have an idea what numbers have been published and what the numbers are saying. That's basically the only involvement of government in the work that we do, in any of the work we do.
Fantastic. Mr. Rwani.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think we must congratulate the NBS for the independence and the integrity of the numbers. Secondly, I think the employers of the NBS include multilateral agencies who also fund this activity. So they're not just a government agency, they work for world best practices. But coming to think about it, we grew by 0.55% this in Q2. That is about 2.3% below the population growth rate. In other words, Nigerian women give birth to 14,000 babies every day. And the output here, used in terms of babies, will only feed technically about almost 2,000 or 3,000 babies. So we still have to increase our production to over 2.8% to actually be equal to the amount of new mouths that are coming in every day. And also we need to grow at above 5% to absorb the unemployed. So there are two issues here. One is how much production do you need to increase to take care of the new mouths? And two, how much growth in activity do you need to be able to absorb the unemployed so that you can have some social stability in the system? I think that's one of the key issues that the analysis was, and that's why we say it's good news, but it's too soon to cheer. There's a lot of work to be done.
But that's a very good commentary there. But again, of course, that's not for Oyemekale, the statistician general. I'm sure his job is to provide the numbers.
And we can comment.
The chief of the NBS, Mr. Kale, there are very few key economic data we're looking at. The latest unemployment and underemployment figure, as well as labor productivity. How soon are we likely to have these very critical numbers as well?
Well, the NBS works on funding, and when we depending on how quickly we get our funding, we get to work. So now that we've received some funding, we're on the field as we speak. Staff are trying to get those numbers that have been outdated. Once we get our funding on time, we always get our numbers out on time in line with our targets. But once we don't, then we get delayed. And I think that's, again, what happened with this particular report. So they're on the field. We're expecting that within the next 3 weeks, they would have collected all the data, maybe 4 weeks, because now there's a backlog, and we have to stretch a couple of quarters together. So I'm thinking within the next 4 weeks, those key numbers, the indicators that you mentioned, should be ready. Unemployment is a lot harder to gather than GDP statistics, because GDP statistics has a large component of it, which is the financials of companies, which is easy to retrieve from the FRSs and the SECs and so on, as opposed to unemployment, which is a purely household survey. You have to go to households and get this information, so it takes a bit, and you have to verify the information, so it takes a little bit more time. So I think within 4 or 5 weeks, we should have all that data ready.
Thank you very much.
Just to also add, in line with what Mr. Rewane said, that the way we see it, now speaking as an economist now, the way we see it is, look, I believe there are 3 stages. You go into recession, you have to first get out of recession, which is positive growth, and that's anything from 0.0001 whatever percent positive. Then from there you start to recover. My definition of recovery is going back to where you were before the slump, which is basically where you were at 2014 when we started to slow down. Now you have recovered to where your economy was. Then you start to grow. And that means become more sustainable, taking it to more sustainable levels, then you start to grow. So I think there are 3 levels. I think even though this is very good news, at least we're not contracting, but this is just the first stage. The second stage is to get us to where we were before the contraction started, and then from there go forward.
The first stage of good news. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll have good, better, and best. So we're still working through from poor to good. Thank you very much, Statistician General. We got to let you go at this point. It's going to be a very busy day for you, but we're keeping Bismarck Rewane here. Mr. Oyemekale, thank you very much from our Abuja studios. We're back after the break. Now we'll be right back with Mr. Rewane.